Ooh, suddenly soundtracks are here to provide you. Suddenly soundtracks will show you care. Oh, be more the soundtrack inside you with sweet understanding. Oh, with sweet understanding. With sweet understanding. Soundtracks are your friend. Hey guys, welcome back to Suddenly Soundtracks, our show here on Take 3, where we dissect a movie musical song by song and judge a movie musical solely based on the soundtrack that it provides. First, we will dissect the entire movie, song by song, and give our rating of each song out of 10. Then we will rank each song from worst to best, then give an overall average of our scores. In the end, my final verdict will be given, and it will either be not rockin', scratched disc, one-time listen, download the soundtrack, or rockin' for the best of the best. This here is part of our Christmas marathon here at Take 3 for Christmas musicals, and it's one of the most beloved of all time. Does it hold up? Do we love it? Find out now as we dissect the great Rankin Bass classic, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Join Rudolph in a trip to the island of misfit toys. Meet Yukon Cornelius, the funniest prospector of the North.
Gadzooks, the humble snow monster of the North strikes again.
Meet Santa's elves and hear 7 original Christmas songs. Burl sings,
Have a holly jolly Christmas. It's the best time of the year. I don't know if there'll be snow, but have a cup of cheer.
it's a holly jolly Christmas special for the entire family. Don't miss Rudolph, Sunday, December 4th, in color on most of these stations.
So guys, we're here to dissect Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but I am not alone. As you probably have foreseen, I am joined by 2 very special guests. Manning Franks, how are you doing, my man?
I'm super excited to be here. I'm glad this is my first time on Suddenly Soundtracks because this is a movie that holds a special place in my heart.
It does for everybody's childhoods, indeed. Chris Doman, how are you doing, my man?
I am doing very well. I'm happy to make my debut on this show, talking about a movie that, just like Manning and just like millions of children all over the nation and all over the world, I grew up with. And yeah, this movie does hold a special place in my heart, and we'll have to see if it necessarily holds up.
Yeah, we're gonna, because we're judging this solely based on the soundtrack, and let's see if these songs actually hold up as well as we all think we do from our childhoods. Now we're gonna start off right off the bat with the first song, which is actually the overture of this Christmas special. It's a very, very orchestrated, great overture that kind of starts off the musical, giving a sense to the audience that, okay, these are the themes, these are the motifs that we are going to hear throughout this 50-minute special. And yes, this is a 50-minute musical with like 11 songs. This is crazy. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on the overture of this and Burl Ives' perfect rendition of the prelude to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
It's very Christmassy.
Yeah.
When you think of Christmas, this is the kind of stuff that you're thinking about. You're thinking of, a very sort of soft and sweet. You're looking at the music, which is very bouncy and it's very upbeat. but it's not afraid to slow down because, you know, some of the best Christmas carols are some of the more slow songs. And the overture kind of tells you that this is what you're in for. You're not in for just one type of song. You're in for multiple as the movie will continue. And honestly, this is a solid, absolutely solid opening.
Burl Ives' voice just signals Christmas. Even if he's not singing, just talking, it's just like, oh, that's Christmas. Because you grow up hearing, you know, his classic rendition of Holly Jolly Christmas and other various carols that he's performed. But this, I'm a huge fan of overtures because this is kind of like the accumulation of all the orchestration and even some of the accompaniments of the actual songs themselves. And having this all together to prepare you for this, which is a magical movie, I am more than thrilled that this exists because this is just so much fun. And as Chris said, melancholy in a way when you get to that There's Always Tomorrow, because it's still a very beautiful section. But yeah, I think this is a very excellent and very well done overture. And if you can get a little kid to not skip it, you've succeeded.
So Chris, out of 10 Bumbles, what do you give the overture?
I give it a solid 9. 9 Bumbles.
I would give this a solid, if not excellent, 8 out of 10.
All right, cool. Just because I wish my criticism of this is just that I wish Burl Ives sung it. I know it probably wouldn't have worked because it would be foreshadowing of the actual movie. It might spoil things. So I'm docking it down a little bit to 7.5 Bumbles out of 10. It's good. It does its job. It's fine. It's solid. I just wish there was a little bit more to it. I don't know what though. But you know what? Let's move on to what I consider to be probably my least favorite track of the entire film.
Jingle, 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 you will hear my sleigh bells ring. I am old Kris Kringle, I'm the king of jingling.
We're introduced to Rudolph's family. Donner, Rudolph's dad, and his unnamed mother, and Rudolph, it's established that he's born with this deformity. Essentially, his nose glows, and they're really embarrassed by it. So they hide his deformity from Santa, who comes into the cave. And Santa sings this song that kind of laments what he's looking for in a reindeer for his kind of expeditions for Christmas Eve. And honestly, I do not know what the actual point of this song ever actually was. He just sings about liking, they are not just reindeer, they're the fastest deer I know, ho ho. He pretty much talks about his reindeer and how much he loves his reindeer, but it never really goes further than that, especially in the context of this film. Manning, what are your thoughts on Jingle, Jingle, Jingle?
I understand where you're coming from. It doesn't exactly progress the narrative whatsoever, but this is to me the equivalent of the triple dent gum ad in Inside Out, where it just plays over and over. This is the one jingle of the movie, befittingly so, jingle, 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 that I just can't get my head out. I am old Kris Kringle, I'm the king of jingling. It's just something about it that just is so lighthearted, as this entire movie is. And while it's not particularly progressive with the plot, it does in fact have an incredibly catchy and very memorable tune to it that we'll get to some other ones that may not have. But this one, I think, is very good. Not great, but still really enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, I'm a little harsher on it. It's not that the song is outright terrible, because it is performed very well. The accompaniment is fantastic, and this is a very Christmassy sounding song, as pretty much all the songs in this film are. But what does it have to do with anything? It has nothing to do with anything. It has nothing to do with the scene prior. It has nothing to do with the scene after. It's quite possibly the most pointless song in the film. Am I saying it's bad? No. But it's pointless.
Yeah.
So
you can excuse like a pointless song if it's actually really, really good and really, really well written. If and it does stick in your
head. Like if it's used to develop the character.
Yeah.
But the problem is if that's what's supposed to be there for, then it's essentially Santa just bragging about himself, and it's basically him doing what rappers do nowadays. It's like, come on, Santa, you're way too modest to be a modern day rapper. Lay off the brag track, okay? Leave that to Lil Wayne, will you?
But Chris does bring up a very, very good point. Santa throughout this
Oh, that's
movie,
great.
yeah, Santa throughout this entire movie is very arrogant, very unlikable. Throughout this entire movie, he's grumpy. You don't really like Santa in this movie, which is very different from other Santas you've seen in other Rankin Bass films. This Santa is really, really harsh until the end when he sees the opportunity that, oh, Rudolph can be of use to me, and he kind of uses Rudolph, and it comes off like that. We'll get to that. But even though I really like catchy numbers in musicals, if it's a catchy number that really is pointless and has nothing to do with what I think needs to progress the film, it really, really detracts. And when the character singing it is very unlikable, and the topic of the actual song is confusing to even explain on a podcast, there's an issue with it, and I give this 6 bumbles out of 10. It's a very weak song. Chris, what do you give it?
I give it 6 out of 10 as well. Like I said, it's very well performed, it's very well orchestrated, and the sound quality of it still holds up immensely well for 1964, but it's pointless. So I can't go higher than a 6.
I guess I'm not that far. It's a 7 out of 10 for me. It's very, very catchy. Doesn't progress anything whatsoever, but I love it. Kind of. Maybe.
Now we get into and we're introduced to Hermie. Now, Hermie is an elf that is not interested in the elf stuff that all the elves like to do. All the elves like to make toys, be around for Christmas, have the Christmas spirit. Hermie likes it in a different way. He finds joy in actually helping people, and he wants to be a dentist for real. He wants to be a DDE. Now, the problem with that is his boss gets kind of cranky about that and berates him before their performance for Santa. After he gets berated and he is ordered to go to elf practice, the rest of the elves leave the room for Hermie to kind of sit to himself and kind of think to himself. As he thinks to himself, we're greeted to this song, Why Am I Such a Misfit?
Why am I such a misfit? I am not just a nitwit. You can't fire me, I quit. Seems I don't fit in.
Why Am I Such a Misfit kind of encapsulates everything that you need to know about Hermie and how self-deprecating he is. Why Am I Such a Misfit also kind of dictates the actual motif of the actual movie. Because we're introduced to this song later on when Rudolph sings this song. Now note, when we go through Rudolph's version, it's going to be the same score as this. Because they both kind of coincide and bookend each other really well for the movie before we get into the more notable reprise that happens as a duet. So this version of the song is very, very heartbreaking, very heart-wrenching, especially this early in a Christmas special. And it gives you the character study you need for Hermie when you first introduce him.
With Hermie, it's very interesting because after we get exposed to sort of the elf lifestyle and what goes on in the shop every year and how how the elves are supposed to be, but Hermie obviously is just different, which clearly this is a very obvious allegory for people who like the same sex, which, hey, more power to you, man. But what's so interesting is that you're right, how quickly he does sort of self-deprecate because of that. But what's also nice is that at the end of his stanza, he's able to accept the fact that, you know what, I'm not going to fit in, so I'm not going to bother trying. I'm just going to be my own thing, be myself, which, sure, that's a message we've had hammered in our heads for 5 decades, but at the time in 1964, that wasn't such a huge thing. At the time, it was, be what society tells you to be. So, honestly, and I appreciate the fact that the film was able to do that. So, yeah, I thoroughly like this scene. It's just the performance itself is only fine.
I like it. It's nothing that's the most heartbreaking thing is, of course, the lyrics, Why Am I Such a Misfit? And that to me is the highlight. Is like, you're watching as a kid, and it's like some people can actually relate to that and understand that no matter what your walk of life could be, because people have been ostracized for different things in life. But yeah, It's just so short and so there that I can't really give it high remarks, but I can't say like, oh nope, it's absolutely terrible. But I can't praise it as highly as I want it to be. I give it a solid 5 out of 10 bumbles. It's there. It's perfectly fine.
I think it's a cute little number, and it's very poignant to his story in the special. So I'm gonna give it a solid 7 out of 10 bumbles. It's deserving of it, and like I said, yeah, it's short, but it's sweet and it's to the point, and it establishes his character without too much exposition or too much filler.
For me, this introduction actually does give you a good sense of who Hermie is and how self-deprecating he is throughout the entire movie itself. So, you know, I was kind to it like Chris was. 7 out of 10 does its job and does its job beautifully. Literally, right after Hermie does his, Why Am I Such a Misfit? Rudolph sings his. He realizes that he's not accepted by his family or society or even Santa, and he questions that, and he walks out of his house in the snow and pretty much sings to himself the reprise of what Hermie was, and echoes what Hermie was singing. And you see that both of them are on the same exact wavelength.
Why am I such a misfit? I am not just a nitwit. Just because my nose grows. Why don't I fit in?
You know, it does make you ask, like, well, geez, why is this, you know, young reindeer taking so hard on himself when it's not his fault that he can't control what he was born with. But, you know, lest we forget, society can be a cruel mistress. But it's a very fine little number, and again, just like with Hermie, it tells you who Rudolph is. It tells you his personality. It tells you his hopes. It tells you his dreams. It tells you his struggle, and it does it in just a short amount of time, which it's short, sweet, to the point, and that's why I thoroughly enjoy it as well. It's a nice. It's like having the right wine with the right kind of pasta.
I enjoy this one, but not enough to be like, this is something I want to go back to and listen to. You hear it and it progresses the story finely, but it's not something I want to go back to and listen to on its own, because I think that's what we'll find what the reprise is actually for and better suited for. But yeah, it's fine. Progress the story, but it's not something that I will go back to.
Chris, what do you rate Why Am I Such a Misfit Part 2?
Again, because it's too short to actually like give it any worthy praise, but it is long enough to give you an idea of who these characters are and what their motivation is. Mm-hmm. So I actually am going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Like it's a good use of such a short track to tell us about these characters.
I think I have to go with 5 out of 10 bumbles, because it's fine, it exists, it's there, and it's something that can be used to progress the story forward, but not something that is something you want to revisit at least.
I think we're all on the same page. I'm 7 out of 10 bumbles along with Chris. This happens. This is necessary for the plot. It's not necessarily the most memorable track in the soundtrack, nor does it need to be.
All out for elf practice!
The elves are getting ready for Christmas, and it's established during this song that they love the holidays. They want to make presents and give presents to children with a song called We Are Santa's Elves.
We have a special job each year. We don't like to brag. Christmas Eve, we always fill Santa's bag.
Which establishes the elven community as very happy, very jolly, and very in the Christmas spirit. But it also is intercut with Hermie, who isn't necessarily interested in what everybody else is going for. So We Are Santa's Elves is a very jolly song by the elves. It's very quick. It's very catchy to a certain extent. It has a great heart to the song. The instrumentation is great for 1964 as well. All the instrumentation in this movie is fantastic. And some of the imagery and animation in this stop motion number is fantastic, with all the instruments and all the elves being happy and stuff. Manning, what are your thoughts on We Are Santa's Elves?
This is one of my favorite, One of my favorite might be strong. It's definitely up there because this is what I like in Rudolph is how light and fun it is. I'm not looking at it for characters. I'm not looking at it specifically for the story. It's more about the feeling that it evokes, and this evokes just simple joy, and I love it just because you get an idea of what the elves do, and it's just so ridiculously fun. So we have some instrumentation. Someone falls in a tuba. Someone falls in a sack for Santa's sleigh, and it just is.
Someone falls into a timpani.
Exactly. It's pandemonium is what it is. It's absolute pandemonium. But it's fun because you get an idea, a little personality to the elves, and you see that contrast later with Hermie. I wanted to call him Hermes. That's not it. Hermie, the dentist. So I really enjoy this, and this is definitely something I really enjoy.
I enjoy the melody of this song. I think it's a very cute song. It's very short, sweet, to the point, which, again, I enjoy that about it. And again, the instrumentation is fantastic. Like, this is one of the best accompaniments to a children's Christmas special ever. Ever.
Yeah.
Blows most of the competition out of the water.
100%.
But it's that pandemonium that actually kind of distracts for me. Now, I'm not. Some of it does work. Like when the boss is being super serious about his conducting, but then he drops the stick. It's like, no one saw that. No one saw that. But when the one dude is standing up on the marimba and he's trying to play it, I'm just like, as a percussionist myself, that hurts my heart. It's like, get the hell off of those right now before you hurt yourself, my friend. And I'd like to point out one really big continuity error. So, anybody notice how the chief or the boss elf, he's got this very aggressive voice. It's almost like John C. Reilly mixed with Justin Roiland. But then, right before they set up the song, all of a sudden he sounds like he's Hank Azaria with his balls clutched in a vice grip.
Okay, Santa. Now let's try out the new elf song I wrote. And remember, it's for Santa. And the one-a, and the two-a, and the three-a.
What happened, voice actor? Why did you suddenly change voices?
I've always thought that was him just being, like, he has that mean voice to the actual elves, but since he was in front of Santa, maybe he changed his voice.
Yeah, but to be fair, but again, when he says, all up for elf practice, Santa and Miss Claus are there in the scene, so that doesn't... continuity.
Are we sure that's him and not like someone else off screen doing it? Do we actually see him? His lips?
You see the lips move.
Wow, I just completely missed that because it was always like the voice was always strange. I never put two and two together. This because you're right, that is a big continuity error. Now that you pointed out, man, you guys are destroying this movie for me. Please stop.
Oh, well, just wait next year until we talk about the '98 version. Then I'll destroy that.
Yeah. But actually, let's get into the ratings here. We Are Santa's Elves has a fun spirit, really gives you a great sense of what this movie has in store for you in terms of, at least in terms of tone. This sets up the tone beautifully, and for that, I'm giving it a solid 7 bumbles out of 10.
I give this actually the same, a solid 8 bumbles out of 10.
Awesome. And Chris, what do you rate it?
Despite my points about distraction, like I said, there's still too much good in the recording and in the actual execution. So I have to give it a solid 7 out of 10 bumbles. This is still a very fun song. Like if I'm just listening to the song itself, boom, I'm in. I'm in like Flynn.
After We Are Santa's Elves, you're introduced to the Reindeer games, where, you know that verse in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer where everybody is making fun of him because of his shiny nose. That entire sequence happens in here, and after he gets berated by his classmates and even his coach, which is really cruel, he cries and he runs into the forest, but is followed by a deer, a female deer. Not a ray, a drop of golden sun, a deer.
Let's say a doe.
A doe. That's it. A doe. So then he's followed into the forest by Clarice, who tries to make him feel better because she actually feels kind of smitten towards him, and the feeling is mutual. and she sings
Oh.
to him a song that's very inspirational called "There's Always Tomorrow."
There's always tomorrow for dreams to come true.
It's a very empowering song. Her voice, although she does sound like a 30-year-old person singing a song, it does take you out of it a bit. The song itself is very beautiful and very poignant. Chris, I know you have completely opposite views of this. What are your thoughts on that?
I only have one issue, and that is the voice actress who plays Clarice is way too old.
Yeah.
Way too old to do the part. At least with the voice that she gives Clarice naturally. Like, she sounds fine when she's older,
Mm-hmm.
but at that point in her life, you know, because she's, what, a year old? Like, you should have a 10-year-old at maximum be singing this song. However, the accompaniment is so beautiful. It is so perfect. It's like the first time you hear Silver Bells. It's just nice and sweet and almost somber, but very uplifting. The lyrics are actually, again, very good. Again, simple, but sweet and to the point. And in the context of the film, like, it's very powerful that she is actually willing to give this deformed reindeer a chance just to at least, you know, express himself, because nobody else is going to. He was just shunned by every single other reindeer and most of Santa's team.
For 1964, this kind of comes off as like the 1964 version of God Help the Outcasts, where she's kind
Yes!
where she's kind of telling Rudolph that he, although he's an outcast, although he is different, everyone will love him, and there's always a spot in there for you because of how you look, no matter how different you are. It brings the spirit of Christmas all together, and that's what I like about it. Manning, what are your thoughts on Tomorrow? Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
As a kid, this was the one I always skipped. I just was bored to tears with this, and even going back, other than the fact she does sound like a 30-year-old woman, and yes, of course, the lyrics are very touching, and the orchestration's very pretty, but even while rewatching it and listening to that, it comes out of left field so much. But this is my problem with the Clarice character. She just kind of comes in for this one song, and now suddenly, oh boy, they're all smitten. And I have a problem with the God Help the Outcast, because, well, I can get to that later, because we have progressed Esmeralda's character before then, and then we have that idea. But then she just suddenly comes on because she can sing a nice song and have a pretty voice with it. I just don't care enough about her to actually invest inside this slow song, because this is a song, I guess, the deeper meaning isn't really there. It's more a meaning of just, like, it's a surface level thing of, like, this, accept people for who they are, for being different. And this kind of, like, beats you over the head with that, not in a negative way, just in a way that I don't really connect with, and it just seems like it slows down a really lighthearted and very fast-paced children's show. And it's just something that I don't really care for. I can't knock it by saying it's bad. It's just not something I've never connected with on an emotional level in comparison to some of the other things that we'll get to, that another slow song, mind you, that we have coming up.
Yes. And I will say that as a kid, this song doesn't really appeal to children. It doesn't have that ability. No. Even as a kid, I wanted to skip it because I wanted to get to, like, the fun numbers. I wanted to get to Bumble. I wanted to get the things that looked cool. Not this. But as you grow older, you kind of get more accustomed to it.
Fair.
So, Chris, how many Bumbles do you give Tomorrow?
Boy, you people are gonna freak out or something, because like I said, I only have one problem with the song, and that's the voice, but otherwise it is a 9 out of 10 for me.
Whoa!
Yeah, actually, I'm not too far off of that. I love the song itself. I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10 for me.
It's 4 out of 10. It's just, it's there. I know. I'm sorry. I can sense the cringe, and I know you hate me. I'm sorry.
So after that song, Rudolph and Hermie meet for the first time. They meet each other for the first time in the forest. and they realize that they are both very similar, as was established by Why Am I Such a Misfit earlier on in the film. This time, they both come together in this duet. This is where things get really, really tricky. On some home video VHSs, you'll see them come together on a song called Fame and Fortune. On others, on DVDs, more likely, you will see them come together on We're a Couple of Misfits. From the research I've done, that Chris has done, there hasn't really been a specified reason why they recorded both versions. I'm assuming it was just. I do not know the reason why. We can discuss that when we get to Fame and Fortune. But for this first one, they come together on what's the more popular song, We're a Couple of Misfits. That's a joyous kind of. They both meet, they realize they're both pretty much the same person. They can connect. They both finally have somebody they can talk to about their problems, and it's a very joyful duet.
We're a couple of misfits. We're a couple of misfits. What's the matter with misfits? That's where we fit in. We're not daffy and silly. Don't go round willy-nilly. Seems to us kind of silly that we don't fit in.
No, this is the one I do prefer this over the original one that we have, because it's a lot more lighthearted and symbolic of these two people coming together, of melding of the minds, if you will. But it's not nothing. It's not nothing that I just want to praise to the mountaintops. But it is something that I am positive, because this progresses their relationship further. Because these two characters are going to be with each other until the remainder of the, well, not the entirety of the movie, but for the majority of it. And it's really well done in what it can do, and really fun little adventure. But I like it.
Okay, so yes, I am one of those people who had the home video where it had the track we'll talk about in a second here. Yep. And I'll talk about We're a Couple of Misfits on its own merit. Mm-hmm. It's always good to have a reprise of a song you've already heard, to where it actually ties in with what the characters are going through. And in the case of Rudolph and Hermie, they both sang Why Am I Such a Misfit? So it makes sense they both sing the song We're a Couple of Misfits. It makes perfect sense. Nothing against that. I don't care for it. It's not as catchy as the alternative. It's a little too wordy. It's a little too it's too much of a mouthful to try to get across. You know, where you're trying to do We're a Couple of Misfits, why am I such a nitwit? It's like, again, it's not bad. And the lyrics are actually pretty good, but it just doesn't click with me. And plus, I also didn't grow up with it. So, yeah.
There's no nostalgia goggles, which actually I'm in Chris's boat. Me and him had the same exact VHS from the late 80s that we grew up with in the early 90s that our parents had, where it's this Rankin Bass white-sleeved VHS with a Christmas bow on top, and it has the original version of this movie that was broadcast on television, which has this next song we're going to talk about. We're a Couple of Misfits, again, I didn't grow up with. I actually grew up with the version of We're a Couple of Misfits from Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July. That's what I originally remembered it from. The songs Why Am I Such a Misfit in this movie weren't that memorable to me, and I never thought that they needed a reprise of those kind of necessary. I could see them being musical motifs in the score, but I never thought there was a necessary thing where they both had to combine into this song when we had a perfectly good alternative on the VHS. So Misfits, for me, this reprise is one of the weaker things that we're going to be talking about tonight. I gave it 7 Bumbles out of 10. Manning, what do you give Misfits?
Oh, wow. I felt like I was most positive about it, but I'm only going to give it a 6 out of 10 because it's good. I always rate like 5 as like it's fine. I don't care for it. Don't have any negative opinions toward it. But it's right there. But I'm going to go for a 6 because I do have a little bit of positive recognition with this, because I did not, for one, grow up on Fame and Fortune. I grew up on this one. So when we get to that one, we'll see how my opinion is. But right now, it's a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10 indeed. The reason why it's a little higher for me is because it's in Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, and I liked it in that. It's not a terrible movie for me, and I have grown up with this, so that's for me. It's kind of iffy for me. Chris, Misfits, what do you give this?
again, so despite the lack of catchiness and the wordiness of the lyrics, like it's still a, it's still a good song. I'm not gonna trash it just because I don't connect with it and because I didn't grow up with it. So I'm still gonna give credit to where it's due and give it a solid 6 out of 10 bumbles. So
it's nowhere near a bad song. None of these songs in this movie are.
Yeah.
It does its job, but this next one does it, in my opinion, even better. Now, cut from the future releases from this late 80s VHS is the original duet that Hermie and Rudolph sing called Fame and Fortune, which pretty much has the same exact message of I'm a couple of misfits, the same spunk as we're a couple of misfits, but it's a hell of a lot more catchier. The instrumentation is a lot more jumpy, a lot more orchestrated, and it's a different animated sequence.
Fame and fortune, fame and fortune, we're off to seek them now. Anyone can have them both, it just takes the right know-how.
And being as this was their original vision for the song and the film, and the fact that this song in particular has a lot of great lyrics and a lot of great set pieces that aren't in We're a Couple of Misfits animation-wise, just bumps this up triloads to me. Fame and Fortune is a fun song, and I wish more people have heard it. It's fantastic. Chris, what are your thoughts on Fame and Fortune?
Now, yes, and again, this is the one that I myself grew up on, and while I can already potentially guess one of Manny's counter arguments. Mm-hmm. We're a Couple of Misfits works better from a character perspective. Fame and Fortune works better from a story perspective. Because what are these two trying to do now? Now that they've teamed up and they're friends, they're trying to get the hell out of there. Off to an adventure, off to fame and fortune, off to find somewhere where they're not ridiculed because of who they are. And to be fair, can you really pick that up from the song? Not necessarily, but okay. But think of this as like some of the songs from Snoopy Come Home. Every time that you see Snoopy and Woodstock on the road together, you just have a nice, fun road trip song. That's what Fame and Fortune is. It's that nice little road trip song to sort of get your mind off of both these characters' depressing lives, because you know what, they've just met each other. They've met a friend. They finally have someone they can connect with in this world. So you know what, screw it, let's run around, let's have some fun. And
100%.
Yeah, and the animation is, of course, pretty awesome, because it's Rankin Bass. When it comes to stop motion stuff, it's always top notch, and it still holds up. And yeah, I have a lot more to say about this song than I thought I originally was going to, because I thoroughly enjoy it. Like, this is one of my favorites from the short. So yeah, I love it.
No, I have heard of this song like before. Maybe like, I'm not sure if it was on TV or if I have seen a VHS or on something sometime. It's like been there. I've heard of it. So when you guys reminded me, oh yeah, we're gonna review this one as well too, I was like, okay. I listened to it again and I was like, interesting. All right, cool. Listened to it again right before we came on, and it was like, okay, this is a pretty good song. But I think in time it'll grow on me, because I don't remember what I had. I'm not sure if it was just like a recording from TV or if we watched it on TV every year, or if I didn't even have it to the DVD and I'm just making things up in my head because, I don't know, as a kid you can't remember everything. But it's a good song. I don't have an emotional attachment to it really as much as you guys do. But you guys talking about it makes me wish I loved it more. So I think if you ask me if the next Christmas when it comes around, it's going to be higher. But right now, I'm still iffy about it because I've been so used to We're a Couple of Misfits proper that this one might overtake it by next year. We'll see.
It's just a matter of what did you grow up with and what nostalgia goggles are you wearing. It really comes down to that. So, Manning, Fame and Fortune, how many bumbles?
It's gotta be a 5 out of 10. It's not bad. It's not great. It's just there for me. But again, we'll see in the future.
Indeed, I'm giving this sucker 8 bumbles out of 10. I love Fame and Fortune so much. Wish more people have seen it, but I get the whole We're a Couple of Misfits is a little bit more iconic. Chris, what are your thoughts on Fame and Fortune? Your rating?
Well, so I'm sorry to actually screw you over on my original rating for this, Clark, but I'm actually gonna go a 9. 9 out of 10 bumbles.
Wow.
Because obviously with an overly analytical mind like mine and the way of how I think of the implication of a story, it's the simple fact of I can imagine these characters like having this song basically be their escape from reality. So, yeah, that's why it ranks a little higher for me, just because sure, that's me projecting depth into this movie, but the movie gave me that inspiration for said depth. Yeah. So,
if a song can give you that projection on what you want it to mean for the actual outline of the actual film itself, it supersedes its job. It really actually does. It gives you because a song should also be your own projector. You can project your feelings onto a song, and if it actually enhances your experience with the film, that song did more than its job and did more than it's worth. And Fame and Fortune does that in spades. So after Fame and Fortune, the plot kind of takes a lunch break, and they meet this very likable, burly explorer, Yukon Cornelius, in search for silver, gold, peppermint, and the mighty Bumble. And we're treated to an off-the-cuff performance of Sam the Snowman, voiced by the great Burl Ives, singing Silver and Gold.
Silver and gold means so much more when I see silver and gold decorations on every Christmas tree.
As birds and squirrels decorate a Christmas tree. That's essentially what this song is about, and it sounds just as pointless as you can think it does. Problem with that, though, the song is actually really good. It's just the scene that it's in does the plot no favors, and although the song is really good, you have to put at least some sort of context in it for the song to actually resonate with you. I hope that makes sense, Chris. I know you have differing opinions. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to fight you on that one because he sings the song as a counter to Yukon's greed of wanting to get just silver and gold.
Well, what do you think of our friend Cornelius? Seems all he thinks about is silver and gold.
It's well-intentioned. It gives you a little bit of... Actually, it also gives you a little bit of who Sam is as a character. You know, because... Which that, even though he's the narrator of our story, that never happens. How often do we actually learn about the narrator's personality?
Silver and Gold also kind of... Because Silver and Gold was a huge hit before the movie came out for Burl Ives. So they shoehorned kind of the song itself into the show.
As I was saying, I'm not arguing with the placement of the song. It's rough, but that's kind of my only issue with it, is because he still sounds great singing it, and it's
Burl Ives, yeah.
And it's a very nice arrangement. Like, you'd think a song like this would be a little more string heavy, a little more brass heavy, but no, literally, it's a light string and an oboe in the background. It's just very relaxed, just so it can get its point across. And honestly, like, I appreciate this. I appreciate good simplicity, and that's what the song is.
I'm basically going to echo what most of you guys said. The placement of this is, when you mentioned, I was like, wait, which one is this one again? Because it just doesn't fit in the story. I thought, like, maybe, wait, does Yukon sing this one? And I'm like, oh, no, wait, this is Burl Ives' melodic voice, or a fireside voice, if you will. Maybe not melodic in the sense of, like, you know, Michael Bublé or Frank Sinatra, but more like, you know, there's something homely about it, and there's something fireside. You want to listen to it. And I can't knock Burl Ives, because I mentioned I love him and just hearing his voice. But yeah, this song comes out of nowhere, except the defense that Chris gave. I can understand and I see where you're coming from. But still, even with that, that's still not enough for me to praise it to where the placement does feel off. However, the song itself is very good. It's just it's not needed. And even the jingle that I preferred with was very, very short and kind of at least had the main characters interact. Sam just sings it with a tree while they're decorating it.
Yeah.
That's good. I am not knocking the song as being bad, though. The song is really decent, but it does get knocked down a few pegs just because of A, it's poor placement. It's basically a glorified product placement. And B, I feel like you just want to move on with the story, and it's not necessarily the most appropriate song to put in that place. Anyway, I'm giving Silver and Gold 7 Bumbles out of 10. Manning, what do you give Silver and Gold?
I'm similar to yours as well. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's fine. It's good. Not great, but good.
Exactly. Chris, let's hear it.
I am giving it an aggressive 8. Just because again, you can't argue with the quality of the actual song. It's just you can't argue with the placement of it and the point the point of it being there in the first place. So, but to be fair, it's Burl Ives. Are you really going to say it's bad?
No.
You can't really say it's bad. His voice is amazing for the stuff that he sings.
It is.
And then you're introduced to the great Bumble creature, which is totally not based off of King Kong. This Bumble thing is amazingly designed. I loved it as a kid. Again, as a kid, I loved King Kong 1933. Gravitated towards the stop-motion giant gorilla in this film. Was amazing. And then they're chased. They're chased by the giant Bumble creature and land on the island of misfit toys, run by King Moonrazer, which is a giant flying lion. This is such amazing design. He's underused in this film. But they're introduced to the island of misfit toys when they crash land on the island, and these toys are broken, misplaced, kind of odd, and they begin to sing a song to them about what they are about.
We're on the island of misfit toys. Here we don't want to stay.
This one is one of my favorites. I alluded to there's some being my top favorites. This one is one of my favorites because it starts off very slow, very somber. You think it's going to be one thing, and then it starts to build about, I guess, like 20 seconds in or 10 seconds in. And then it becomes this joyous song of these misfit toys being like, oh, I have this. Well, hey, did you know that I have this as well, too? Look, I'm a water gun that shoots jelly. It's so much fun and ridiculous, but at the same time sad because these toys, well, first off, sentient toys, that's amazing and for any kid, but at the same time it also brings up the question of like, wait a minute, so the elves build the toys so they become sentient while they're building or after magic that's placed there? I don't know. Interesting. I find it's a weird concept. I don't know why I've always thought about that. Anywho, it's a great song. I love it, and it just kind of makes you feel for our two main characters of Hermie and Rudolph, and how they can relate to these characters.
I very much thoroughly enjoy this song, mostly because it's very upbeat, it's very nice and slow moving. You know, when Christmas Day is here, the most wonderful day of the year. But take a listen to the lyrics whenever they're not doing that big reprise, they're doing that big chorus line. Literally, they're just talking about how much it sucks to be them.
Yeah.
Like, here you have this wonderful, happy melody, and you're getting lyrics that are like, nobody wants to play with us because we suck. Like, oh. So
Yeah.
it's very bittersweet in that sense, and it's very interesting that Rankin Bass in '64 would have had the balls to do this kind of move in a children's special. But hey, more power to them, because the way they carry the sense of irony throughout the song, it's consistent with the kind of characters that they are. They've accepted they're this bunch of, misfits who will never be played with, never be loved, because as King Moonrazer himself says, a toy will never be truly loved until it is loved by a child, or never truly be happy. And once you finally get that, like once you get it from their perspective, you're like, well, shit, I'll play with you if it makes you happy. Come on.
100%, Chris. And this film, this kind of is a good bookend, actually, if you're listening to this with either Fame and Fortune or We're a Couple of Misfits, because this kind of encapsulates the entire feeling of the movie, which is, regardless if you're an outcast, you're always loved by someone or will be loved by someone. And this kind of establishes the want for that, and then the finale gives that to you on a silver platter. So, The Most Wonderful Day of the Year is one of the most one of the most celebrated songs in this film, just in general. Chris, what do you give Most Wonderful Day of the Year out of 10?
I give the song an 8 out of 10.
I can actually give this a 9 out of 10. So this is one of my favorite songs and has everything you want from this. It has the sad, it has the happy, it has the melancholy, it has the joy, it has everything you want in the Rudolph stop motion special.
I just have to echo everybody's statements. 8 out of 10. This is great. Solid song. And then we get into, okay, now this is a problem with a 50-minute musical where we're about like 30 minutes into the film, and there's like 15 minutes of what I call a song dead zone. There isn't a single song for a solid like 15 minutes because there's actually a time skip. After the Island of Misfit Toys section, there's a time skip of about like 6 to 8 months at least, because he looks like he's like a teenage buck, like during this song Dead Zone, and he pretty much rescues his family because they've been searching for months for Rudolph from this giant bumble creature. And he rescues it from the bumble creature, who turns out to be good. Yukon kind of tames him a little bit. Yep. But that has nothing to do with the soundtrack. So after he rescues his family from Bumble, they get back to Santa's workplace. It comes to a realization that Rudolph can actually save Christmas by leading Santa through the blizzard that is happening at that very moment. And he becomes a member of Santa's reindeer sleigh. Then we get the classic,
Have a holly jolly Christmas, it's the best time of the year. I don't know if there'll be snow, but have a cup of cheer.
Surprisingly enough, this is not the one you hear on the radio. Clark reminded me. I had to go back, and the tempo is much faster. There is an actual choir background when he sings a lot of the time, which is in the other one, but it's utilized differently because it's the elves singing. But this is definitely different. I wouldn't say it's bad. It's not bad, but I really do love it because Holly Jolly Christmas is one of my favorite Christmas songs. It's something I really enjoy. Nothing like the best one, but it's one of the high points.
Yeah, I understand why they re-recorded it, because the original version, as he was saying, the one that you're more familiar with on the radio, kind of doesn't have that finale vibe. It has a very jolly vibe, but it doesn't have the kind of finale spunk and energy that you need from a finale, which this kind of is. Because you get into the title song, which we'll get into next, that kind of caps everything off in a nice Christmas bow. Chris, what are your thoughts on Holly Jolly, this version? Uh-oh.
It's my...
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh God.
So, you know how we were talking about silver and gold and its placement? Yeah.
A little bit.
This song was definitely put in just to be on the record. There's not even an attempt to have it actually tie in to any particular point in the story. Again, at least with silver and gold, you can make the argument that it is Sam the Snowman's way of trying to, defend Yukon's mindset. You can't do that with Holly Jolly Christmas. In terms of it actually being a part of the story, it's even more pointless than Jingle, Jingle, Jingle. That being said, is it bad? Oh, of course not. No, it's fantastic. It is so well recorded, but again, what the show is, it is trying to, it's us rating the songs based on how they go with the film. And I'm sorry to say it, Holly Jolly Christmas does not go with the film.
When you're listening to a soundtrack of a film, and you're just listening to the soundtrack itself, it must accurately represent what the story is about through song, so you can listen to it without ever watching the film and get the same exact emotional empowerment from it, at least very close. When you're listening to these songs on a CD, Holly Jolly just comes out of left field, has no kind of context to what you heard before, what you hear after, and it just comes off as, yeah, like Silver and Gold, it's a solid song, but you can put the Time Warp from Rocky Horror Picture Show in the middle of Lion King, and it would sound great because it's a fantastic song, but that makes no sense in The Lion King. I don't know why I decided to do that.
I want this now.
I don't want this now.
But you see the point. It's kind of like you can't just put a great pop number, a great Christmas number in a movie and expect it to get high ratings if its context doesn't really drive it throughout the entire soundtrack. It doesn't have a driving force. Although it's a great track, Holly Jolly sadly gets a 7.5 bumbles out of 10 from me just because of how lackluster the actual placement of it is, even though the instrumentation is better, I think, than the actual single version. Manning, what do you give Holly Jolly?
I understand where the criticism comes from. I always saw this as the emotional, because this has the emotion of a beautiful finale. And while the lyrics translate to a much more evergreen, general Christmas ending, I feel like it still fits because this is a kind of like accumulation of all our characters coming together and experiencing the joy of the holiday season, as cheesy and hallmarky as that sounds. I gotta give this an, what did I write down? 8 out of 10.
Oh boy. So again, I'd like to reiterate, I love this song. I love this arrangement. I love the performance. But again, in the context of the film, it does not work. Hence why I have to give it a 4 out of 10.
It also gets really knocked down because you go through 15 minutes of a song dead zone in a 50-minute musical. It's kind of top heavy and it's bottom shallow. And you read it to a song that comes out of nowhere. It feels like they just put this in to fill up time because they knew they didn't have enough songs for it. That's what.
Well, plus also, I want to make one quick point before we move on.
Yeah.
If this was an on-television music video that they put on the end of the film, oh, dude, sold. Because in that context, it works perfectly. But again, just one last time. In terms of what it does for the story, what it does for the characters to provide closure for anybody's arc, for whatever, it does nothing.
And then we're greeted to, after Holly Jolly, good old Yukon finds his peppermint mine.
Because that's the important thing. It's not saving Christmas for.
I found a peppermint mine. It's great.
And then Hermie gets rehired by that grumpy manager, and he's now the dentist at the North Pole. But then we are greeted to the title track at long last. We got hints of it in the beginning where Burl Ives did the prelude. But we get the full version of the title track at long last.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glowed.
This song needs no introduction. Over the credits, you see that Santa goes back to the island of misfit toys, gets the toys, and during the title the credit sequence, the toys from the island of misfit toys are being delivered to children all over the world, and everybody is happy. Chris, this classic number, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, what do you think of Burl Ives' finale audition during the credits?
What's there to say? It's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. My issue, my literally, this is a nitpick if ever there was one, but it's when Rudolph's nose just goes off randomly during the song. That's it. That's my only nitpick. It's the perfect closeout to a fun adventure that we all go on for about 50 minutes with some characters that we come to know and love, and it's just a good closeout.
This is my favorite song in the entire movie, because this is the one we play every year we add that like a light bulb, and every single thing goes after. This has resonated with popular culture so much. So much. It is amazing. And seeing Rudolph's face when he finally is able to feel useful, and then throwing all of those. Are you okay, Chris? You okay over there? You good?
I'm cracking up because I mean you might have missed it because we were talking about this the other night with Kristen and all them, and they're not.
Oh
used to
no! Yeah, I know. Oh jeez. After Dark, guys. You'll get to take 3. There's suddenly soundtracks after dark. But this is one of my favorites. Having Charlie and all the misfit toys finally being able to go to the people that love them. Kids be able to actually treasure them, and Rudolph being actually utilized in the way that he feels special. I love this song. I love where it's used, and it's sheer perfection for the story.
It is. And I don't think any of us here on this panel can... When you hear the song Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you either think of 2 versions, the one by Gene Autry or the one by Burl Ives. It depends on which version you prefer, but this is still a standout version of the song. And obviously, for context reasons, you have to end on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And you can't give this, for me, anything lower than 10 Bumbles out of 10, just because of how iconic Burl Ives' actual version is.
Yeah.
It really, really is. Manning, what do you give Rudolph the title track?
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our first perfect score of the night. 10 out of 10.
What do you give it, Chris?
I have to give it a 9 out of 10. Like I said, just one little nitpick, but that's fine.
Nitpick? Yeah, it's a nitpick, but it's also still a seminal Christmas classic. All right, guys. Now we go into the final part of the show where we rank and rate each song in the film from worst to best. So, Manning, my dear fellow, what are your rankings from worst to best?
Starting off at the very bottom. Sorry, guys. It's There's Always Tomorrow. I know. Get those pitchforks ready, guys. Get those pitchforks ready. Again, I don't even dislike any of these songs. There are some songs that don't resonate with me more than others. I enjoy them all for the most part. Anyway, bottom is Tangent. They're Always Tomorrow, followed by a couple of Misfits, the original, or the one with Hermie and Rudolph, followed by Fame and Fortune. We then have We're a Couple of Misfits, the proper. And then we have Silver and Gold, followed by Jingle Jingle, then Santa's Elves, 4th Holly Jolly, 3 Overture, 2 Wonderful Day, and then number 1 Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
And here comes, and here I am, Mr. Controversy, going from worst to best. Holly Jolly, Jingle Jingle Jingle. We're a Couple of Misfits proper, then We're a Couple of Misfits the stanzas, the individual version. We Are Santa's Elves, Silver and Gold, Most Wonderful Day of the Year, The Overture, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Fame and Fortune, and There's Always Tomorrow is my favorite.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That one really came around on me.
Yeah, it did. I think my list is kind of similar to Chris's, and this musical is fantastic. The worst, though, has to be for me. I think we all have different worsts. My worst is Jingle Jingle Jingle. Then We Are Santa's Elves. Then We're a Couple of Misfits, the proper. Then Why Am I Such a Misfit? Silver and Gold, The Overture, Wonderful Day of the Year, then Fame and Fortune, Holly Jolly Christmas, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the title track, and finally my favorite as well is There Is Always Tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I have been superseded here. I have been voted off the island in terms of my...
So, this overall, this movie, when you re-examine it soundtrack-wise, to some of us didn't really age that well, which actually kind of makes me a little sad because I love this movie. It's a heartwarming movie. It's just far from perfect. So when you do the math, out of a possible 110 points in total, Chris had 83 out of 110, which equates to 75% for the entire soundtrack on Chris's part. On my part, I had a total of 84.5 points out of 110, which equates to 76% on my part. And for Manning, this one blew my mind. He had in total just 74 points out of a possible 110, which equates to 67%. When you times 110 by 3, you get 330. And our points in total, added up, equate to 241.5 points for us three, out of a possible 330. This itself equates to 73%. That means in total for this soundtrack, it's sadly only 7.3 bumbles out of 10.
We recommend this soundtrack to a one-time listen.
Manning, what are your final thoughts on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
My final thoughts on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer are that it is, while not a masterpiece that will be viewed for generations as a quintessential cinema or television to see, it is without a doubt one of the most heartwarming Christmas specials ever made. It has such sweetness and such life to it and joy.
This was a staple of my childhood. Every Christmas, watching this with my family, with my grandparents, with friends who sadly I don't really see much anymore. But you know, this is a special that holds a very dear place in my heart, and the soundtrack is a big reason as to why. Because look, and as some of you guys know, growing up, I hated musicals. I absolutely hated them. But this was one that I was able to watch over and over, and I was able to enjoy it every single time I watched it. And because it's just filled with that much passion, with that much Christmas. When I think of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that's the first thing I think of is Christmas. So while it has its problems, it's a little dated, obviously, but the animation still holds up pretty well in my book, and it's just a timeless message that will forever stick with me.
Yeah, Rudolph, although it doesn't, as a soundtracks, hold up to a lot of things that are kind of our standards nowadays, it still is Christmas. If you open the dictionary for Christmas television, this is the first definition. It seeps of the Christmas spirit and is a fantastic movie to share with your children. Is it fun to watch? Yes, 150%. It is a tradition. It's not just a family tradition. It's an American tradition. This is like hot dogs. It seeps of the holiday spirit, and it's something you should share with your children every Christmas, regardless of what nationality, anything. Under no circumstances should you skip out on this film. Alright guys, that concludes this episode of Suddenly Soundtracks. Tune in tomorrow where me and special guest Breanne Chandler from the Movie Trivia Schmodown dissect and break down White Christmas, the day before Spectacular. I want to thank my two guests, Chris and Manning. Manning, where can the good people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Cine_man. That's CINE_MANN.
It's all good. Thank you so much, Manning.
Welcome.
Chris, where can the good people find you online?
You guys can find me on Twitter and my band Last Shot Redemption at LSARBandMN. You guys can follow Take 3 Productions on Twitter and Instagram at Take 3 Trivia. And you guys can follow me on Stardust and Letterboxd at Chris Take 3.
And you guys, you awesome guys out at home who love musicals, can find me here on Take 3 Productions. You can find me on Twitter at ChrisClark8788. Those numbers mean nothing. You can also find me on YouTube at No Man's Land Entertainment. But anyway, guys, I would love you to take care and to keep rocking.